Pine Hollow greeted Martin Reed with a thin veil of mist clinging to towering pines, the damp earth mingling with the sharp scent of sap. The winding dirt road crawled deeper into the forest like a rope tightening around the heavy thoughts in his head. Inside the worn silver pickup, Lucy Reed, a 6-year-old with crooked brown pigtails, clutched her faded stuffed bunny, its floppy ears so threadbare that one tug could tear it apart. Martin glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. Her wide, clear eyes shimmered with a fragile trust he no longer knew how to protect. He cleared his throat, knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. Outside, a lone forest bird called out into the hush, a reminder that he was about to do something there would be no coming back from. Lucy squirmed closer to the window, watching pine crowns drift by like green parachutes against a dull gray sky. "Daddy, did we bring hot dogs?" Her voice was barely louder than a sigh, but carried forced excitement. Martin swallowed hard and forced a stiff smile. "Next time, sweetheart. Today we just have sandwiches." "That's okay," Lucy said, rubbing her cheek against the bunny's ear, her eyes fixed outside as if afraid to miss something magical. Martin wondered how long it had been since he truly listened to her. Since her mother died, everything had shattered like a mirror struck by a hammer, shards cutting him deeper every year. He had tried, truly tried, to be a decent father. But the harder he tried, the more he felt like a hollow ghost wandering the edges of his own child's life. The tires bumped over a pothole, jolting the pickup slightly. Lucy giggled softly, unaware that to Martin, this stretch of forest was the place where he planned to end the burden he still called fatherhood. He pulled over beside a mossy trail, killed the engine, pulled out the keys. Inside the cab, only the tick of the clock and the pounding in his chest broke the forest's quiet rhythm. Martin stepped out of the truck and drew a deep breath of the damp, resin-scented air, as if hoping the pine smell might cleanse the rot inside him. He opened Lucy's door, helping her down gently. Her little pink sneakers instantly sank into the mud, but she just looked around wide-eyed, hunting for magic only children could see. "Watch your step, sweetheart. The trail's a bit overgrown," Martin said, keeping his voice soft. Lucy nodded, hugging her stuffed bunny tighter to her chest, trailing behind his long strides. Each time a branch brushed her cheek, she giggled as if this really was the grand adventure she dreamed of. Martin never looked back. He just walked on, pushing branches aside, letting her scurry to keep up. They walked like this for more than 10 minutes. Lucy panted, her forehead beaded with sweat, yet she still chattered endlessly to fill the silence. "We have a turtle at school, you know. Miss Ellen lets us feed it strawberries. It kind of smells like stinky socks," Martin murmured a non-committal reply. He didn't really hear her anymore. Every word dissolved into dust inside his mind. A tiny part of him wanted to stop, turn around, clutch her close, and beg forgiveness. But the other part, the part that had long turned to stone, whispered, "Just keep going. It'll all be lighter soon." A sparse clearing opened among the pines. Bare earth, a decaying stump, a few mossy stones. Martin halted. Lucy looked around, a faint disappointment on her face. "Daddy, is this the campsite?" "Something like that," Martin muttered. He unhooked her small backpack, set it on the ground, and patted her head with a motion that meant nothing. "I forgot something in the truck. You stay here, okay? I'll be right back." Lucy clutched his sleeve, the other hand twisting her bunny's ear to a limp curl. "Can I come with you, Daddy?" Martin crouched, pressed a fleeting kiss to her forehead. "No, Lucy. This is part of the surprise." Lucy's eyebrows knit together, but she nodded anyway. "Okay, but come back soon." Martin didn't answer. He turned and walked away, faster than she could process. Boots crunching dry twigs that faded into the thick wall of pines until the sound was gone, swallowed by the woods. Lucy sank down by the stump, hugging her knees. Her bunny flopped sideways into the dirt. The wind combed through her hair, carrying a chill that sank deep into her bones. Lucy curled up beside the rotting stump, her eyes fixed on the trail where her father had vanished. She kept telling herself, "Daddy will come back, just a little longer." But the restless wind and whispering leaves seemed to steal away every innocent promise. She began to hum softly, a lullaby her mother used to sing when Lucy was just a baby in her arms. The tune was frail, trembling, dissolving into the resin-scented damp. Her stuffed bunny lay limp across her knees, its torn ear flopped sideways. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Her tiny hands turned stiff and cold. Her stomach ached with a hollow growl. Lucy dragged her backpack closer, rummaging for the sandwich her father said he packed. Inside was a single dry slice of bread. No hot dog, no candy. Tears pooled and spilled when Lucy realized maybe Daddy really did forget. Or worse, maybe Daddy never meant to come back. After a while, the chill crept into her fingertips and along her spine. She pulled her knees up, rocking gently, as if her tiny body could make its own warmth. Inside her mind, she counted softly. 1, 2, 3. Daddy will come back before I reach 100. A growl from her empty stomach broke the fragile spell. Lucy unzipped her small backpack, hoping to find something, anything, to quiet the ache. All she found was a dry slice of bread, its edges stiff as stone. She nibbled once, grimaced, and couldn't force it down. The first tear escaped down her cheek. Lucy hiccuped softly, afraid to cry too loud, afraid Daddy wouldn't hear her if she did. She remembered how Mommy used to cradle her close, the smell of her old knitted sweater, the gentle lullaby humming through the dark. Mommy always said, "When you're scared, hold Bunny tight. Bunny will protect you for me." Lucy pressed her nose into her bunny's ear, breath shallow and hot. Dusk melted slowly into deeper shadows. A faint rustle from a nearby pile of leaves made her freeze. She strained to see. A small snake, its back striped gray, slithered lazily into view. "Go away," she pleaded in a hoarse whisper, but the snake didn't understand her fear. It slipped closer to her bare ankle, poking out from her pants. Suddenly it struck, a quick bite, and vanished back into the brush. Lucy let out a weak yelp, rubbing her ankle where the tiny teeth had grazed her skin. It burned and puffed up a bit, but didn't ache like the stories she'd overheard about deadly snakes. Still, panic made her tremble harder. "It's okay. Just a bite. Bunny is here. Mommy is here," she rasped, her voice cracked by cold and tears. She hugged herself tighter, her bunny squished against her ribs, the last shield in a world her father had walked away from. In her head, the counting crawled on. 90, 91. Daddy, come back to me. But the forest answered only with the wind, whispering promises that no one kept. When Lucy had nearly drifted into sleep, feverish and sore from the bite on her ankle, the forest had turned a deep blue-green beneath the dusk. Crickets hummed in waves beneath a blanket of old leaves. The wind sighed through the tall pines like a ghost's breath. She could no longer keep counting. The last number she remembered was 97. All that remained was the cold seeping into her chest and the fragile drum of her heartbeat slipping out of rhythm. Then, through the thickening mist, a dry branch cracked. Lucy's heavy eyelids fluttered open. Moonlight slanted through a break in the canopy, landing on a broad, shadowy figure moving from the tree line. Its coat was caked with mud, one ear notched with an old scar, and its amber eyes caught the light like slow-burning embers. Lucy's lips parted, her throat raw. "Doggy!" The animal padded closer, a massive German shepherd, its fur fluffed out from the damp night air. Its nose sniffed briskly along her swollen ankle, reading every faint trace of her pain. A low rumble vibrated deep in its chest, as if grumbling at the dark for making her suffer alone for so long. Lucy's tense shoulders loosened. She remembered her teacher once describing brave dogs that could find lost people, guard them, and never run away. She never dreamed one would come for her. Shadow. The name drifted into her mind like a tiny miracle. Shadow, don't leave, she whispered, a trembling hand burrowing into his muddy fur. Shadow licked gently around her ankle, snuffled the bruise, then pushed his big head under her arm as if to say, "Don't be afraid, I'm here now." A distant howl carried through the pines. Shadow's ears flicked upright, every muscle locked, teeth bared slightly in a silent warning to anything lurking nearby. He did not bark recklessly. He just growled low and steady, enough to tell the forest, this child is not alone anymore. Lucy dropped her head onto Shadow's broad back. His warmth bled into her cold skin like a flicker of fire on a freezing night. For the first time since Daddy left, she felt less alone. Her tiny fingers clutched at his coarse, dirty coat, eyelids drooping, listening to the sure, even rhythm of his breath. When a stronger gust rattled the high branches, Shadow adjusted his stance, curling even closer around Lucy to shield her from the chill. Every so often, he bent to lick her forehead, a quiet promise that someone was keeping watch. That night, deep in Pine Hollow, a child abandoned by her father was not abandoned after all, and a dog once thought lost forever found again the one thing he was born to do: stand guard, protect, to his very last breath. Sarah Holt pulled her thick wool coat tighter around her shoulders as she stepped along the damp wooden porch. The small cabin she shared with Noah Carter sat halfway up Pine Hollow's slope, tucked far from paved roads and city smoke. They had chosen this seclusion after Sarah walked away from her years training rescue dogs, a life that had cost her more than she could count. But this morning, what jolted her awake wasn't the rustling forest or the whispering pines. It was a single sharp bark piercing the heavy blanket of fog. "Noah, did you hear that?" Sarah called, eyes locked on the misty tree line. Noah Carter appeared with an axe resting on his shoulder, brow furrowed. "Yeah, not a wolf, not a coyote. That bark, it's a signal." Sarah turned, a glint of cautious hope flashing through her worry. "That's the bark of a trained canine marking its location. A working dog doesn't bark for nothing." Noah knew better than to argue. He flipped open the first aid kit and nodded. "Let's go. I'm right behind you." They moved fast, pushing through dew-soaked huckleberry bushes, leaves slapping wet against their pants. The bark came again, closer now, urgent and precise as a knock on a locked door. Crossing a soggy, low trail, Sarah stopped dead. Before them, a small clearing lay scattered with pine needles and jagged stones, and in the center, a sight that stole her breath. A little girl with tangled brown hair lay curled up, cheeks flushed with fever, eyelids half shut, breathing shallow. Beside her sat a huge German shepherd, fur slicked with rain and forest debris, amber eyes locked on Sarah, wary, unmoving, an unshakable fortress. Sarah's throat tightened. "Oh God!" The dog rumbled low in its chest. A simple warning. Don't make a mistake. Sarah crouched slowly, hand out, voice calm and coaxing. "Good boy. Easy, friend. I'm here to help." Shadow kept his unwavering vigil over Lucy, but shifted his big body aside just enough to give Sarah access. She dropped to her knees, pressed the back of her hand to Lucy's forehead. Burning hot, lips cracked, ankle puffy, but thankfully not dangerously poisoned. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" "What's your name?" Sarah murmured, meeting Shadow's grateful, steady gaze. Noah cracked open the first aid kit, handing Sarah a warm cloth and a bottle of water. She dabbed Lucy's cheeks, dribbled cool drops onto the cracked lips. Lucy whimpered faintly, eyelashes fluttering. Shadow leaned in, resting his broad head against Sarah's arm like a silent thank you. "We can't leave her here. You carry Lucy. I'll handle Shadow," Sarah ordered, her voice steel strong. Noah nodded, lifting the child gently, cradling her close to trap her warmth. Shadow padded alongside them, step for step, eyes never straying from the fragile life in Noah's arms. Sarah settled Lucy on the long bench by the fireplace, tucking a thick blanket around her small frame and adjusting the battered stuffed bunny that the girl clutched even in sleep. Shadow lay at her feet, amber eyes fixed on the child, ears pricked for any noise beyond the cabin walls. Noah handed Sarah a mug of strong coffee, his voice raspy. "I called Sheriff Dalton. He's on his way." Sarah nodded, eyes locked on Lucy's flushed cheeks, slowly regaining color in the fire's glow. This little one spent at least a night out there. If it weren't for Shadow, I can't imagine what we'd have found. Noah sank into the chair across from her, gaze drifting from Shadow's unwavering stare to the frayed collar Sarah had slipped off the dog's neck. The nylon strap was tattered, the metal tag tarnished but still readable. K9 Shadow, Rescue Unit 12. "I remember him," Noah said slowly. 2 years ago, Pine Hollow rock slide. The rescue team thought Shadow got buried with 3 others. Sarah traced a finger over the worn tag, her hand trembling faintly. "But he didn't die. He found someone to save again." Lucy stirred, eyelids fluttering open. A faint breath escaped her cracked lips, carrying a fragile whisper. "Daddy, where's Daddy?" Sarah leaned in close, wrapping the girl's icy hand in her warm palm. "You're safe now, sweetheart. Only good people here. Can you remember what happened?" Lucy's lower lip quivered. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. Her tiny fingers found a crayon and a scrap of paper by the hearth. She sketched, shaky and childlike, a tall man walking away into the trees, a small child curled beneath a stump, a dark-coated dog blocking the path back. Noah hissed through his teeth. "That's her father. He left her out there." Sarah met Noah's eyes, her voice iron strong. "We keep Lucy here, and Shadow stays right by her side until Dalton arrives." Outside the window, a light flurry of snow danced in the air. Shadow rose from his post by the bench, stalking to the door, a low growl rumbling from his throat into the gathering dark. He knew this night wasn't over yet. His vow to guard Lucy had not been lifted. Inside the cabin, the fireplace crackled softly, flickering warmth across Lucy's sleeping face. Shadow lay tight against the door, eyes blazing in the dark, breathing steady but his spine taut like a drawn bowstring. Noah checked his watch, voice low. "Sheriff Dalton said he's 15 minutes out." Sarah sat beside Lucy, gently combing a hand through the child's hair. "We just have to get through tonight. With Shadow here, no one's getting close." Suddenly, Shadow sprang up. His ears snapped forward, nose flaring at the air drifting under the door. A faint tap at the window froze the cabin still. Noah moved first, hand gripping the handle of the axe hanging near the hearth. Then a man's voice bled through the glass, syrupy and spectral. "Lucy, sweetheart, Daddy's here. Daddy's come to take you home." Sarah clenched her jaw. She signaled for Noah to hold his ground, then stepped to the window, peeling the curtain just enough. By the flicker of the oil lamp, she saw him. Martin Reed, hair plastered with dew, eyes hollow, his smile warped into a desperate mask. "Who are you? Get away from this cabin, now," Sarah said through the crack, her tone ice calm. "You don't understand. She's my daughter. I'm just here to bring her back where she belongs." Martin's voice rasped, his hands raised like a beggar's plea. Shadow let loose a deep growl that rattled the glass. His hackles bristled, claws rasping the wood beneath the door. Noah flicked the safety off the axe. "You're not getting past this dog, Martin. Dalton's almost here." Martin barked a laugh, but it trembled at the edges. "You think you can keep her from me? She's my blood. The law will side with me." Inside, Lucy stirred awake at the sound of that voice. She curled smaller under the blanket, eyes brimming, mouth trembling. "Shadow, don't let Daddy take me." Shadow heard her. He lunged for the door, pushing through the crack Noah had unlatched. A gray bullet streaking into the cold night. Martin's shout cracked the silence, followed by a muffled grunt in Shadow's unrelenting growl. Sarah flung the door open wide. Martin lay flat in the mud, clothes smeared, wrists pinned beneath Shadow's massive paws. The dog didn't bite. He only rumbled, fangs bared inches from Martin's throat, eyes burning with feral warning. Sheriff Dalton's headlights swept over the clearing. Tires skidded to a halt. Dalton stepped out, cuffs at the ready. "Martin Reed, you're under arrest for child abandonment and obstruction of investigation." "Shadow, easy boy. Good work." Shadow stepped off Martin's chest but held position between him and the cabin door, a living barricade that said plainly, "You will never touch her again." 1 week later, the small Pine Hollow courthouse brimmed with townsfolk leaning in to witness justice. On the front bench, Lucy Reed sat tucked beside Sarah Holt, clutching her frayed stuffed bunny. At her feet, Shadow sprawled like a living shield, eyes open, breath calm, ready to rise at any threat. Martin Reed slouched on the defendant's bench in a rumpled gray suit, hollow-eyed, head bowed. When Judge Mabel Crane rapped her gavel, the low murmur stilled. "We gather here to try Martin Reed for child abandonment, perjury, and obstruction of justice. Defendant, you may speak." Martin lifted his head. His gaze skimmed over Lucy and skittered away to the floor. His voice cracked at first like a confession, but the more he spoke, the clearer his true colors showed. "You people don't understand. Raising a kid like her is exhausting. Since my wife died, everything fell on me. She's always sick, always crying at night, scared of the dark, clinging to me every second. I'm human too. I needed to breathe." A woman in the back row dabbed at her eyes. Martin's tone stayed ragged, but his eyes were dry as bone. "I just wanted one day not hearing her say, 'Daddy.' I didn't plan to kill her. I thought she'd walk back to the truck on her own. I didn't think she'd just sit there and wait." Sheriff Dalton snorted in open disgust. Sarah squeezed Lucy's hand tighter, grounding the child as her father piled every burden onto shoulders too small to carry. Dalton stepped forward, voice steady and hard. "Martin's truck GPS proves he stopped exactly where we found Lucy. No tent, no supplies. He drove back to town, leaving a 6-year-old alone in Pine Hollow at night." Sarah's words came next, trembling but resolute. "Shadow kept Lucy alive. This dog, a K9 I once trained, did what Martin never could: stay, guard, and never give up." All eyes turned to Lucy as Judge Crane asked gently, "Lucy, sweetheart, do you want to say anything?" Lucy squeezed her bunny's ear, looked at Martin once, then turned to Shadow. Her whisper floated like a breeze. "Daddy didn't come back. Shadow didn't leave. Shadow is my home." Silence dropped like snow. Judge Crane nodded slowly, striking the gavel. "Martin Reed, this court finds you guilty of child abandonment, perjury, and obstruction of justice, sentenced to 7 years in state prison." Martin froze in place. Shadow lifted his head, meeting his eyes with an icy stare that cut every rotten tie. Lucy buried her face in Shadow's fur, murmuring, "Now I only need Shadow." After the trial, late sunlight sprinkled warm gold over Pine Hollow steps. Lucy sat on the wooden courthouse stairs, hugging Shadow close. The big dog sat upright beside her, head held high, tail thumping softly on the wood like a quiet drum of happiness. Sarah and Noah stood nearby, speaking in low voices with the caseworker handling Lucy's guardianship paperwork. But Sarah's gentle eyes stayed on these two brave souls, the little girl and her steadfast dog. Lucy looked up at Sarah, voice trembling as if afraid of hearing no. "Miss Sarah, Shadow, he'll come with me, right?" Sarah smiled and crouched to meet Lucy's eyes. "Yes, honey, Shadow will come with you. Noah and I will be your new family, and so will Shadow." Lucy's eyes sparkled like a spring lake, her shy voice steadying. "I'll brush Shadow every morning. Is that okay?" Shadow suddenly straightened, front paws planted firm on the step, chest puffed out like a soldier waiting for his medal. Sarah opened a small velvet box and took out a silver badge engraved with therapy dog. Shadow. Her fingers fastened it carefully onto his brand new collar. While she worked, Shadow's tail wagged in a steady, eager rhythm, ears perked, eyes soft and bright as a child waiting for praise. When Lucy leaned close and whispered, "Shadow, now you're mine forever, okay? I'll brush you every morning." Shadow lifted one big paw and gently placed it on her tiny hand, resting on her knee, a promise both brave and tender. His tail beat faster, nose nudging her cheek with a warm puff of breath. Sarah wrapped her arms around both Lucy and Shadow. Noah knelt beside them, scratching behind Shadow's ear with a grin in his voice. "Welcome home, old soldier. Your biggest mission now is to be Lucy's best friend and hero." Shadow nudged his nose against Sarah's shoulder, eyes drifting half shut, at peace in a way no wild night in the woods had ever given him. A few weeks after the trial, Pine Hollow burst alive in the annual spring festival. Along the main street, colorful flags fluttered, and townsfolk pressed shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on a horse-drawn wagon draped in sky-blue ribbons and white blossoms. Atop the wagon, Lucy Reed sat upright in a sky-blue dress, her brown hair neatly tied back with a matching bow by Sarah's careful hands. Beside her, Shadow sat tall and proud, his coat gleaming thanks to the daily brushing Lucy had promised and kept. When the wagon stopped in front of Town Hall, Mayor Hampton stepped forward, his voice carrying over the square. "Today we honor a very special citizen, a dog who taught us all the true meaning of loyalty and courage. Shadow, Pine Hollow's therapy dog." Applause erupted like a wave breaking against the mountain air. Shadow didn't bark. He simply turned his head to lick Lucy's small hand. His tail wagged slow and sure, ears perked, eyes bright like the first light of dawn. Lucy leaned close, whispering into his fur, "You're my hero. I'll keep you with me forever." Sarah and Noah stood beside the wagon, fingers interlaced, eyes shining with pride. Nearby, Sheriff Dalton nodded to Shadow, a nod given to an old comrade who'd more than earned it. The parade rolled on, laughter and music swirling through the spring breeze. Inside Lucy's heart, everything had changed. No more fear of the dark, no more dread of being left behind. Because right beside her sat Shadow, a living shield, a silent promise that she would never be alone again. As the sun dipped lower, golden rays lit up Lucy's hair. Her small fingers brushed the silver badge on Shadow's collar, gripping the faith she knew would never fade. In Pine Hollow, some promises endure, and sometimes the ones who keep them aren't human at all. In the days following the festival, Sarah and Noah's wooden cabin at the edge of Pine Hollow truly became a safe haven for Lucy and Shadow. Morning sunlight streamed through the small window, dancing across Lucy's tangled hair as she slept soundly, still hugging her battered stuffed bunny. At the edge of her bed, Shadow kept watch as always. His ears twitched, eyes half closed but alert. The moment Lucy shifted, his tail swished gently to say, "I'm still here." Mornings began with Lucy's giggles when Sarah brought in a plate of warm pancakes right to her bed. Shadow hopped up beside her, tail wagging wildly, nose nudging for his own share. Lucy giggled harder, hugging his big head and whispering, "Today I'm brushing you until you shine." Noah stood at the doorframe, leaning his broad shoulders against the wood, eyes reflecting a quiet, content pride. Inside this cozy cabin, there were no old shadows lurking, no cold silence waiting to pounce. Only the soft crackle of the fireplace, the scent of sweet batter, Lucy's bright chatter about school, and Shadow's low, happy barks in reply. By afternoon, Sarah sat on the porch steps, watching Lucy and Shadow play tag among the wildflowers. Lucy dashed, dress fluttering, while Shadow zipped behind her like a breeze, jaws open in a dog's joyful grin. As the sun dipped golden behind the trees, Lucy flopped down on the soft grass, wrapping her arms around Shadow's neck, whispering a tiny wish only he could hear. Shadow pressed his nose to her cheek, eyes drifting shut, tail sweeping back and forth like a metronome of trust. In that moment, Sarah knew that every old loss, every cold rainy night, every scar had been replaced by something brighter, a true home, a real family, and a loyal dog who had kept a promise humans too often forgot. And in Pine Hollow, promises like that always find a way home.